And now we move on to our spotlight section, and it's a double bill this week. We are firstly going to talk about Android 13 Beta 2. We touched on this a little bit, or you did, I wasn't there, in the 75 Party Bus episode, but we're going to have a little look at some of the more in-depth features. So, Warren, what have you noticed from Beta 2?
So what happened last week was that we really didn't get into it. We mentioned some things here and there, most especially about the, enhanced security and all of that. Google, it's been hopping along and bumping up the security and all of that. But I think that two of the most important parts that we didn't mention last week have to do with both the global search or local search and the global search that was taken away. If you guys remember in Android 12 when we first got that search, where if you invoke your app store, then you're automatically placed into the search. And in that search, so it's local first. In other words, local centric. So when I search for something, it tries to search locally on my phone. And then below that, it will show results either from the internet and then results from Google or whatever, things like that. And so that got taken away in beta 1 of Android 13. It was there in DP1 and DP2, and in beta 1 that thing was taken away, and we kind of like a little bit upset about it, but we knew Google was up to something. So they brought that back. And the good news about the fact that they brought this back is that not only did they bring it back, but now you can actually drag a search to your home screen as a widget or as a shortcut. In other words, if you're familiar with what we have in Chrome, so let's say I go to blindandroidusers.com on my Chrome and I tap on that more options, and then I go down to the share, and I could choose to add that thing to my home screen and blah, blah, blah. Well, now,
I thought you could already do that before.
but now what we have though is that this is even better because I don't have to go through Chrome to do that. If I go into my apps drawer, for example, and just type in blind Android users, and it shows up in there, all I have to do is long press and drag it to my home screen. So it's not like that part in Chrome where I need to tap on more options and then go tap on share and then go tap to send it to my home screen and all of that. So I really like that feature.
Oh, good. So you can now skip the whole Chrome faffage. That's good.
Yeah, so the whole idea is that you don't have to go through Chrome to do that. But the exciting thing is that, at least that local search focus is back like what it used to be. And then we have the icing on the cake with the ability to find something and drag it to your home screen. So if something that you constantly use, you could just drag it to your home screen and call it good.
And you could search for icing on the cake and add that to your home screen.
Exactly. Maybe like your pizza that you had last week, Fee, maybe you could search for that and put it on the home screen.
That would have been handy when it disappeared. Yeah. I mean, listeners won't know about that, but yes, there was a bit of a pizza drama last week. It was found in the end. But yes,
it was very funny.
If my phone could have found it for me, that would have been handy.
I know. Now, none of us thought about this, though. You probably could have fired up Outlook or some other app to see if you could find it. I'm looking for food. Go to that food mode and see if it'll find your pizza lying there in the oven. How come we didn't think about that?
You'd use Be My Eyes, didn't you?
No, well, I didn't want
didn't.
I didn't want to ring up someone random and say I'm an idiot and I've dropped a pizza and I can't find it.
They can't see your name and you can't see their name, so that there's no accountability.
Yeah,
it's
but
not like
what happens
Ira
if
where you're a paying customer.
But what if there was someone that you knew who answered it though? Because I know some people who are volunteers on there. That would be
There
man.
are over 1 million volunteers on Be My Eyes. Like the chances of that are infinitesimal.
I know. I mean, I found it in the end. I was going to ask you about
And
Outlook.
they still wouldn't know who you were anyway because they wouldn't see your name.
Chances that you'll hit someone you know is just like maybe 1 in a million.
And also, they can't see your name. Your name doesn't come up. And
your face might if you filmed yourself, but yeah.
But you're not filming yourself. You're filming like the back of your oven.
Back
the oven. Yeah. But no, I found it myself. This was a point of pride for me, you know, that I would find it myself, and I did.
I would say a point of principle, but it's a point of pizzaful.
Yeah. Oh dear me. No, I was going to ask you though. I opened Lookout the other day, and it wanted me to sign in. I was like, huh? Sign into what? So what was that about?
Well, in reality, if you open up Lookout, it should, if you have a Google account, it should have just followed that. But if maybe something happened, something odd happened, unless you have multiple accounts, then it might ask you which account you may want to use.
Yeah, I've had that before because I do have 2 accounts, but
yeah, that's why.
But it didn't list them. It just gave me a username and password thing. I was like, huh? Is this what account does it want? Google, or do I have to make a new one? Or that was confusing. So I thought I'll ask you guys when I next spoke to you. I wasn't actually that bothered right then, so yeah.
Yeah, just Google.
Yeah, and that thing might have helped you in finding your pizza, or one of those super sins in Vision, whatever. Say, hey, I'm looking for something. So let's move on to the next item there in Android 13 Beta 2. And this one is particularly important for those people who are multiple language speakers. And this is where something like multi-language TTS might come in. And that I'm talking about the ability to say, hey, I want to assign a particular app to use XYZ language. So, for example, Aid speaks French and German. He may decide to say, hey, I want to set my Adobe scanner to use German, and maybe my WhatsApp or whatever to use French. So I find that really interesting that Google was able to do that. And I think it's going to help a lot of people who have skills for multiple languages, or maybe they just want to if you're not an English speaker, but you want a particular app to be in English, you could switch that right there into English. And I think that's a very good thing. What do you guys think about this feature?
So are we talking about that Google will change the language of talkback? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about changing the language you're typing in, or what? What are we talking about here?
It's the language of the app, I think, isn't it?
Language of the app. So, for instance, you have your apps, and I'm going to show what I'm talking about.
Oh, like the menu will be in Spanish or something instead of in English.
The whole app will be in that Spanish or in German or whatever. So if I go into system settings, that's where it is found, and then there's the language app or whatever. And you can choose that and tap on the app that you want to be in a particular language. That's what that is. And I thought that is absolutely cool. So if I have an app, let's say, sometimes you find apps that are written in other languages. So if I get that app, for example, I could go choose, hey, this app, I want it to be in English. I have an app like that. It's a Bible app, and it's like in Portuguese. It comes from Brazil or some place like that, and I don't understand Portuguese. And there was another scanning app like that, and we wrote to the guy, but he didn't have time to do it. This would be the time to switch that app into English.
So do they use Google Translate to change the language of the app, or how do we know how they do that?
It's a mystery in the sense that, maybe Google is doing something in the back end and therefore, converting that particular app into another language. But I'm just glad, though, to see that we have something like that, because I think it kind of breaks through some language barriers and all of that, most especially like the example I just talked about. I got an app that I would like to use, but it's not in my language. And so now I could just absolutely just switch it to English and be able to have access to that particular app. And I think that's really good.
I think
Yeah,
that'll be particularly good for people who aren't English speakers, because there's so much of this stuff is in English or Spanish, or the more widely available languages. And if you're primarily, I don't know, a Dutch speaker or something. I mean, actually, most Dutch people are really good at English. That's the bad example, but just say, then being able to do that would be wonderful, because you'd get access suddenly to loads more things that probably didn't make much sense to you before.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about this feature, though, it's local, not global, isn't it? So you change individual apps, do you not, Warren? Or could you change all of your apps to one language without actually having to go into the apps?
I want to go into my system settings here and see if I find that. So in order to get to what I'm talking about, I'm in the system settings, and you go to system and languages.
System, languages, gestures, time, backup.
You go here.
System, navigate up.
Once you are in here, what you want to do is go to where it talks about languages.
System, languages and input, Gboard, in list.
You tap here.
Languages and input, navigate up, button, out of list.
Once you are in here in the languages where you have the keyboard and all of that, then as you scroll down toward the bottom, you're going to find something that talks about per app language.
On-screen keyboard, physical keyboard, speech, voice input, text-to-speech output.
Oh, I went too far.
Languages, English, app languages, set the language for each app.
Languages, set a language for each app. So if I tap here, for example.
App languages, navigate up, button, out of list. Showing items
what
1 to
it
10
does
of
is that it will show you all the apps that you could set to a different language.
Elizabeth Voice English GB.
Oh, no, those are my TTS.
At voice allowed reader, system default. At voice floating button, system default.
So you see, by default, they are following my system language by default. Now, if I wanted to change it to a different language, for example.
At voice sync plugin, system default.
I have so many at voice allowed things.
Adobe Acrobat, system default.
So let's say I want to change Adobe to some other language. I haven't tried it. I'll have to tap here.
App language, navigate up, button, out of list.
And I'm going to see if I needed to have those language packs installed or whatever in order for it to work or not. But so after tapping on that.
App language. Adobe Acrobat, in list. System language.
So I got
English, United States. Spanish, United States.
There's Spanish.
All languages.
And if I tap on all languages, I should be able to go look for another language, I believe. Let's see.
English, United States, Afrikaans.
There we go.
Azerbaijani, Latin. Catalan. Czech.
And on,
Danish, in list.
Things like that. So that's how you would go about changing that app into some other language. And I thought that is absolutely clever. As it brings accessibility, and I'm not talking accessibility in the sense of accessibility that we know as people with disabilities, but, meaning having access to something that otherwise one couldn't have had access to. So I think that is absolutely a huge game changer that Google has implemented, and I'm glad to see that come to this beta too.
Are there any other Beta 2 features you wanted to highlight?
I think those are probably the most important ones, because some of them are just like, improvements on what we already have in DP1, DP2, and Beta 1. But these are the ones that actually stand out for me.
Excellent. And in our next item, we'll probably touch on things that might arrive in Beta 3 or the next one.